Welcome to the Family Life Blended podcast. I'm Ron Deal. We help blended families and those who love them pursue the relationships that matter most. How in the world do you find time to Sabbath when you're running at breakneck step-family speed? Well, that's the topic of this episode of Family Life Blended. We'll get to that in a minute. Tim was watching on YouTube, gave us some feedback. He said, "Thank you for your ministry." Well, Tim, you're welcome, and we appreciate your economy of words there. I'm glad it's been a blessing for you. And by the way, did you know we're on YouTube? You may not have realized that. Yep, you can watch or you can listen to this podcast, your choice. And ladies, don't forget Gayla Grace. She's going to be on YouTube each month hosting Women and Blended Families. And of course, you can go back and watch anything that you missed. That's our monthly live stream designed just for ladies, no matter what your role. Wife, mother, stepmother, sister, whatever that might be, grandmother, step-grandmother, Women and Blended Families is for you. Check the show notes for a link to our YouTube page that has not just that, but hours of free content. You're welcome. I hope your church is launching a small group this fall, and if not, perhaps you or someone needs to attend our summit on step-family ministry, which is next month in Dallas. Leaders from around the country are going to gather October 10 and 11, 2024. We're going to share ideas, network, learn from what's working wherever the ministry is taking place. Our theme this year is Great Expectations. And just one of the things that you're going to learn is how to start a small group in your local church so you can help prevent redivorce and break that generational cycle of divorce that we see happening in families all the time. I hope you'll join us, you or somebody from your local congregation. The show notes, again, will get you connected and tell you how you can be a part of that. Some of my favorite episodes of Family Life Blended are with Kathi Lipp. She is a best-selling author, publishing about 20 books, including Clutter-Free, which we've talked about on this podcast, The Husband Project, and But I'm Not a Wicked Stepmother, one of her great books. She has spoken for Family Life Blended at both our Blended and Blessed live stream event and our summit on Step Family Ministry. And she's here back with me to talk about her newest book called Sabbath Soup. Kathi, how are you? Welcome back. It's great to have you.
Ron, I'm thrilled. I love being with you. I love our discussions. I love hanging out with you. And Nan, thank you for having me back.
Oh.
And Gayla, oh my goodness.
I know.
I love the whole team.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We love working with you as well. Okay, Sabbath. Yeah. I don't even know how to spell the word, let alone do it. Would you help us, please? I really think in our crazy hustle bustle, high demand, take the kids on their weekend athletic, whatever dance trip thing.
Cry. Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard.
So hard.
And we don't even really talk about it. Let's back up and go all the way back to like Exodus and think for a minute about why in the world God established the Sabbath for the Hebrew people, what it was for, what it was meant to do. And let's just sort of start there so we can begin to think about recapturing that in modern day life.
Yeah, Ron, I don't know what your idea of Sabbath was growing up, but for me, I remember it was like, you don't get to go to the movies. You don't get to play with your friends. You don't get to hang out. Like, it was this whole list of things that I wasn't allowed to do. And I'll be honest, I rebelled against it. Yeah. I was frustrated by it. I was angered by it. And it took, I'm embarrassed to say decades, to realize that I don't believe that was God's heart behind Sabbath whatsoever. That God's heart behind Sabbath was to connect with Him, to remember Him, to rest, and to be reminded of His provision. Yeah. To say, look at everything that you have, and let's take a day to not only remember everything I've given you, but to enjoy everything I've given you. And the chief among his presence. I don't know. What was it like for you?
Yeah. Well, as you were talking about your Sabbath experience growing up with all the things you couldn't do, I thought, oh, you spell Sabbath Boring. Yeah,
Right.
that's how you spell Sabbath. Yes, I don't know that I ever really put words on it. Sabbath was just a day you were supposed to rest. And somewhere somebody told me it's because God rested after he created the universe. And then since I've learned that the language there of God rested is really more like God moved in. Not that he took a break, because does God ever need to rest? No, it's more like God moved in. He built the house. And what would you do if you were building your grand scheme house and you spent all this time and energy and money and you finally got it down and the last little paint was dry, and what do? You'd walk away from the house and go somewhere else. No, you'd move in. You'd go and sit in the living room and go, yes, this is great. And that's what God did.
I never thought of it. Yeah, I've never thought of it like that.
And so the word rest always sort of threw me. Like, what am I supposed to do? Take the day off and not really have to bother with anything? Like, no, I think what you said, what God was doing for his people was provision. That's what you said. The reason he told them, don't work, don't clean clothes, don't go pick up stuff out of the garden and cook food, is because here's the bottom line, I think, about Sabbath. You work for yourself 6 days a week. And if you're not careful, you're going to start to think that you're self-reliant. And so what I want you to do is 1 day a week, stop and remember that I provide everything you need. I really was providing what you gathered on the 6 days.
Right.
You're definitely going to feel it on the 7th because you didn't do anything yourself to earn it, to cook it, to make it, to enjoy it. You just remembered, I got you. And that's where rest, as in peace, comes from, where we feel the peace of being in his loving arms, comforted that he is right there. And I really don't have to be self-reliant and get it all done because ultimately I'm in his hands.
I love that picture. And I think about the manna, of course, that's such the picture of this. And God saying, for 6 days you're going to go do all this stuff. But on the 7th day, I've got you. And I'm going to provide what you need. Yeah. And you don't have, because I think it's so easy to tend towards worry. And is there enough? And this feeling of, I have to hustle all the time, like you said, to take care of myself and to take care of my family. And I think God is the opposite of hustle because the hustle is the worry manifested. And that's not what God's about.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Okay. So let's start with that assumption. That's what he wants for us. That's what we get to remember. That's the peace we get to experience. We get to put self-reliance aside and go, he's got me. I'm okay. Now, deep breath. If we could bring that into modern life, what would it look like?
Yeah, so it's so interesting. I was just having a conversation with a group yesterday, and when we were talking about Sabbath, the idea of a day of rest was too much for their minds to even comprehend.
We can't even get our heads around it.
Right. Because a lot of these women were blended families, or they have small kids, or they've got older kids who, like you said, need to be in the several different places. And I said, but can we think of it as just a little bit of time where it's a day may feel like too much. Maybe we need to work up to that. It's okay because God is perfect, but he knows the rest of us. We're just getting by here. And so to say, is there a way to think about it as like a beginning and an end to the week? Like, you have worked hard this week. You have done all the things. Is there an opportunity to just put a period on the end of that sentence and rest in that? And if if Sabbath was created for anybody, I believe it's blended families. I really do. God is not surprised by our blended families, right? But in a blended family, at least I'll just speak for my blended family, because when Roger and I got married, we each had 2 kids. Our kids were 13, 14, 15, and 17. And yes, we knew we were idiots. We got that. We know that was maybe not our wisest decision. But in order to keep things going, it was amazing how strategic and how planned we needed to be about getting people where they needed to be and managing the strife in our house. This was not an easy blend by any stretch of imagination. And I'm still waiting for that first story of an easy blend. I can't wait to hear that. But I have not personally heard that story. But when we practiced our Sabbath, which was after church on Sunday, so we go to church on Sunday, and then on Sunday afternoon, it was less regimented, less structured. And it was a time for us to be together without having to get people places, without having to cook the meals, without having to, the list that needs to, the never ending list. At least for an afternoon and an evening, the list ended and we could be together. And sometimes it was a movie, sometimes it was a game, but it felt like the hope of what we wanted our blended family to be for just a couple of hours. And Ron, I'm not promising a happily ever after. Our kids are all adults now, and they don't go out of their way to hang out with each other across the blend. But when we are all together, it's an easy hang. That we like to be together. They look forward to being together. And we actually live away from our 4 kids. They all live in the same area. And I know that any one of them could call on somebody else and they would be there for them. And I feel like this opportunity of kind of the setback from the day-to-day hustle, where there were some good things that were going on and some good interactions, really built the foundation for them enjoying each other as adults. Yeah. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking, okay, so you guys tried to honor that on Sundays. Lots of families. That's a switch between homes day, transitioning kids.
Yes.
I mean, somebody has a transition on Friday and somebody's on Saturday, somebody's on Sunday.
Sure.
And that gets in the way of that Sabbath. That's one of those unique things that blended families struggle with.
Yes.
Are there others? I mean, let's just talk around that for a minute. I'm wondering how that worked for you guys, and just what were some of the other blended family barriers to Sabbath?
Yeah. So for us, we didn't really have any swaps. We were the
full-time
house.
Full-time house.
Full-time. But I think about it, when sometimes I was traveling or sometimes Roger was traveling. And so we were not strict about what day it had to happen, but we did get to a place where it's like, okay, there's going to be a time each week, because not everybody can celebrate Sabbath on the day that they would prefer. I think about the police officers, the doctors, the nurses. I am so grateful that there are people who have their doors open on Sundays or Saturday night or whenever it's going to be. So as a blended family, I think what we had to do, because sometimes the kids were other places, and we just did what we could with who we could. And it was okay. And we were not strict about it. This was an invitation. And also, sometimes we had a kid who's like, I want to be at my friend's house. And we understood that our kids were under pressures that other kids were not. And so it may not be the answer for every family, but for our family is we wanted to make that time, which happened to be Sunday afternoons for us, as loving and lovely as possible without pressure
Mm.
to invite them into this. And I would say 4 out of 5 times we had most of the kids there. We did have one child who went through a really difficult time who didn't want to be around the family. And you know what? Sometimes we just had to say, you know what? We're going to try again next week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And because let's be honest, being a teenager in a blended family, it presents its own challenges.
Right,
And
right.
so we figured instead of immediate like, oh no, we're all going to hang together and you're going to like it.
Whether you
This is
whether you
good-
want to or not.
whether you like it or not, you're going to like it. 'Tis our goal was the long-term plan.
Mm-hmm.
Our long-term plan was that as a family, that Roger would love my kids and my kids would love Roger, and vice versa with his kids and my kids, and that we would all want to hang out together. And here's the thing, our plan has worked. It's not guaranteed, but the long range of not putting that huge pressure on them has made it so our kids want to be a part of the family. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that it's worked well for you guys. I heard two big things there. I heard prioritize taking rest, shutting down, making this happen somehow in your home. And then I heard flex, go with the flow, find a way to make it work. Who's in the house? That's who we're going to Sabbath with, that kind of thing based on seasons and developmental needs of kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think about it, if this is God's gift to us, this gift of Sabbath, if I'm treating it like an obligation for my kids or a punishment for my kids, really, who God is somewhat reflected in what mine and my husband's attitude towards God is and how that is passed down to my kids. And to say, this is a gift, I'm going to present it as a gift.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I'm also thinking about the step parent who's tired, who's maybe feeling particularly isolated and an outsider in their own home. And how does Sabbath serve that person? I don't know that we're not necessarily saying everybody in your home's got to hang out together. That's what Sabbath is. No. It is a retreat into the arms of God. It is a reminder that I don't have to have all this figured out, and it's not all up to me. What serves me in being reminded of that? And I can totally see on any given Sabbath that somebody's just retreating into a place where it's going to refuel them. And it could be that there's parts of your family that are together and other parts that not. And some of the time, maybe you're all together for a meal, but at other occasions, maybe you're sort of divided up, if you will, and everybody's getting the refueled. Yeah?
Yes. Well, and I'm a big believer, and I don't know what the stats or the experts, but I'll just tell you, I'm a big believer in that when we were blending this family, there were times that Roger needed to be just with his kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to be just with my kids, because we had different ways of connecting as two different families, especially since, my kids were 13 and 14 when we got married. So we would go to a movie, or we would go to a restaurant that was one of their favorite places growing up that necessarily his kids were not big fans of.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a great, I don't want to say divide and conquer, but it was a great way for, let's just say, when you're in a blended family, there's always a little bit of, how do I want to say this? I don't want to say a stranger in the house, but there's a different level of comfort.
Yes.
When it's just you and your kids.
That's right.
And I needed my kids to experience that comfort. And as a very tired stepmom, I needed to experience that comfort sometimes too.
Yeah. Okay, Kathi, I just want to compliment what you just did, and I want to make sure our listener or viewer caught it. You were careful. You were diplomatic in your wording about that level of comfort.
Mhm.
People who are outsiders to blended families sometimes, I think one of the reasons that people are diplomatic is they're a little afraid of other people going, oh, that's just terrible that you would rather be with your kids and not necessarily with your stepkids. No. This is one of the realities of
Yes.
how step family life goes. In the beginning, you're a collection of insiders and outsiders. We've talked about this a lot. My book, The Smart Step Family, goes into this a great deal because it's so important. So you and your kids came in as insiders. Roger and his kids came in as insiders with each other. And all of you are outsiders with the other group. And every once in a while, we talk about compartmentalization, which is what you've just shared about Sabbath. It serves the children well to just have mom. Just mom, we're hanging out, just like it used to be. This is the most comfortable place for us. She's the most important relationship for mom's children in the household. Yeah, they love stepdad and they're getting to know him and enjoy time with him. But boy, is it nice to just sort of hang out and be at peace with mom. Same thing for dad's kids. And that little moment of compartmentalization, here's what people really got to hear me say, helps to generate energy that it takes to merge and bridge across and connect with outsiders. If you don't feel safe and comfortable in the most important relationship that you brought into the family with, then it's really hard to find the energy to invest in a relationship that you're unsure about. So people need to catch this. The Sabbath hour that you spend with your kids fuels the hour later in the evening where everybody's sitting around watching a movie together.
Yes, 100%. My biological children, my children need to know that I am 100% their safe space. That when they're arguing with their stepbrother, when they're just going through regular teenage stuff that has nothing to do with being in a blended family.
That's right.
Well, they need to know that I am home base, that I am safe, and that Roger is there to support me in supporting my kids.
Yes.
And that, Roger's not replacing their dad. They have a dad. But Roger is their biggest cheerleader outside of their parents. And that is a gift. And let's be honest, when Roger and I got married, we had a protester at our wedding. My stepson was dead set against this. He hated every minute of it. He would not stand up as a groomsman. And if you go into a blended family and say, but that's all going to magically disappear once we're living together, right? And here's the hope, though. Jeremy, who is my stepson, is one of my favorite people on earth. And I would venture to say I'm probably in his top 20, which I will take, friend.
Yes.
I will take.
Yes.
And he wants to bring his girlfriend to visit us. He wants to have us as part of his life. And it's the long game. But if you try to force it, it's never going to happen. But to say I support you going and spending time with your dad.
Yeah.
I want you to do that. You need that. That's a gift that benefits everybody in the family.
Now, Kathi, I know you weren't saying this, but I know sometimes people hear things, and I don't want any of our listeners to hear in what you just said that for mom to be home base and a number one safe person does not equal that you always take your kid's side, does not equal that you never sell them. Look, no, you got to be nice to your stepbrother, whether you want to or not. That's what we do in this house. Obviously, there are times when you still got to be parental with your children. But what we are saying is they need to know that you're available, that they still have you in the sense of a space of comfort and rest and somebody to talk to when I'm anxious about life or whatever it is. That's what we're talking about in terms of that emotional safety.
My kids would let you know very loudly that I was not always taking their side. Here's the thing. I'll always be an advocate for you, but I will never excuse your bad behavior.
Nice.
And to say, you know what? I see why you acted out, because you were feeling insecure about X, Y, and Z. But we need to handle that differently next time.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't Amanda's fault. That wasn't Jeremy's fault. And so we're going to use a different way of communicating that. So I will always understand, but I'm not there to excuse.
Yeah, love it.
And in a blended family, we have to go that extra mile to understand why the reactions are happening, so that we can, because I'm an advocate for Roger's kids too. But I know that Roger's kids are not going to come to me when they were at our house to say, this is what's going on. But my kids always were.
Yeah. The analogy I would give our viewers and listeners is, you remember when you were a kid and you were over at a friend's house and a fight broke out between you and your friend, or, there were 6 kids in the room and something happened. And well, so who do you run to for comfort? You were at your friend's house. Did you run to your friend's parent? Well, maybe if it was a really extreme situation, but no, you probably went home. You went to find the safest person, the person you trust the most.
Yeah.
And that happens in a blended family in the beginning years as people are beginning to find their new relationships and build those new relationships. That's what we're talking about. You just got to understand it. And Sabbath can be an opportunity to compartmentalize a little bit and then connect a little bit. And I want to come back to the connecting part in just a minute. But before I do, Sabbath Soup, let me see if I got this book figured out. This book is essentially a cookbook with a built-in strategy for helping families do Sabbath. Did I get it?
Yes. Yeah. You summed it up better than I have ever, Ron. Okay, so you
can
are
use
now
that.
the PR team.
Okay.
Okay. It's so true. I think that so often, we're using Sunday as a catch-up day. And I guys, I get it. There is no judgment coming this way. But you know who needs that day of rest more than probably anybody else in the house? Whoever the cook is.
Yes.
Exactly. The parents. And so this is kind of a plan to say, I'm going to cook. And then I have in our house Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday after church, and then Sunday night where I'm not touching. I don't have to cook anything. I may have to heat something up. I'm going to put that pot of soup back on the stove, but it's done.
Wow.
And so no decision making, no prep. It's just, it's a gift to our future selves to be able to say, I get 24 hours to not have to think about that and can really rest.
Okay. All the women out there just went, I want to know more about that. Can you give us the big picture? How does it work?
Yeah. So on Monday, you're making a plan and I've got 28 plans in there that you can use. Tuesday, you're kind of evaluating, what do I already have in the fridge? Wednesday, you've got your shopping. So Tuesday, you're making a shopping list too. Thursday, you're doing a little prep, maybe doing some veggies. And then Friday or Saturday, you're doing the cook. And it probably takes 2 to 3 hours. It takes less time if there are 2 parents cooking. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, just a thought.
And just a thought. And what a great role model for our blended families, right? To see us cooperating and working together. But if I'm doing it by myself, which often happens, takes about 2 to 3 hours to cook, but it's a game plan for the rest of the week. And it is such a gift to be able to come home from church, put that pot of soup on the stove, and just be able to sit down and relax. And that's what I want for all of it. Until I started doing this, Sunday was my busiest day of the week oftentimes. I was resting, but what I was doing is I was facilitating everybody else's rest, and that was exhausting.
Oh my goodness. Say that again. You were facilitating everybody else's rest, and that was exhausting.
Exactly.
Again, back to a deep breath. And how can you in your mind find the moment to say, Lord, thank you for having everything for me, providing, and you're missing the opportunity to Sabbath.
Right, because you're so busy providing for others. And in my heart, I don't want to say I'm happy if everybody else is happy, but I will say that there is peace in the house when I know things have been provided for. But it's really nice when Friday Kathi has taken care of Sunday Kathi.
Mm-hmm.
When Friday Kathi has taken care of Sunday family. And, we all have a role in preparing for Sabbath, whether it's laying out the clothes for the kids, or picking the movie we're all going to watch, or just saying, you're going to take your kids, I'm going to take my kids, we're going to go do our separate things, and we'll meet back for dinner. Whatever that is, we all have a role. But when that role is like trying to figure it out Sunday at 1:00, all that is pressure and panic. And that's what I want to take out of our day of rest.
I think we just wrap back around to connection. Because again, hear this, listener. When the work is done ahead of time, you have an opportunity to rest and connect in with people. You're not focused on cooking and meal prep and clean up, and you could put the soup on the stove, and now you get to go and have a conversation and sit down and be with and do puzzles, or whatever that little activity, that connection moment is. I'm also hearing the prep is an opportunity for not just the cook, but spouse and children to join in preparing for Sabbath. Like, we all do something. We all have a little role in, so that when Sabbath is here, we all get to enjoy it and be together. That is ritual building, tradition building. And we all know that blended families, that's one of the ways that you bond and create identity over time, is developing new traditions. This is who we are. A tradition says, this is who we are, this is how we fit. This is one of the things about us you need to know. We value our time together on Sunday afternoon or Saturday, whatever that day is. And so building the tradition together towards Sabbath has the double bonus of being an identity creator for your family.
There is so much opportunity in that Sabbath for building the tradition, whether it's like we have soup on Sunday after church, or we have these new family favorites that were not part of either family of origin, but we're creating new things together. Or, one of the things that we love to do, because we had kids who like different things and things like that, and I provide a lot of these ideas in the book, is a bar, like a potato bar, where you could just go along and pick all your favorite toppings, or an ice cream bar, or a pizza bar. There are all these things that you can do that says we don't all have to like the same thing, but we can all participate at the same time in being together. We rest. We take the gas off the pedal on Sabbath to just slow our roll and just say, we can be together without the pressure that is kind of on blended families in a different way than other families for 6 days a week. And whatever combination of people is here, that's who we're going to be with, we're going to hang with, and we're going to celebrate.
Not everybody has to like the same foods. I talk a little bit about processing, accommodating different food preferences. In particular, I'm thinking in the early days of a new blended family where, Dad and his kids were just used to very different types of food and different types of meals, and Mom and her kids, or whatever that little story is, they're not thinking the same about food and prep.
Please let me tell you about the first time that I had a full-on meltdown on Christmas Day.
Please, we want to hear that story.
So, Roger grew up in Florida, and his parents were in Indiana. Lots of Amish around some of those areas, right? Yeah. And they said, every Christmas we have noodles and mashed potato. I'm like, explain this more to me. And they said, we put these egg noodles on top of mashed potatoes. And I'm like, okay.
And then what? Said, I'd be saying,
that's exactly what I said.
And where's the meat?
Right. What? And they said, no, it's delicious. And I'm like, okay, there's some magical property to this. So I made mashed potatoes. I made the egg noodles that had to be, brought into our house from Amish country.
Okay.
And then I served them because this is what they told me. And they said, where's the gravy?
Oh,
Nobody had ever mentioned gravy. And I'm like, and one of the kids melted down because it wasn't right. I melted down because
it wasn't right.
It wasn't right. Like, okay, so now here is one thing that I've learned is that it was good for me to go to my husband's family and say, can you give me a couple of family favorite recipes? I didn't go to the ex-wife, but I did go to his family and I say, can you give me some ideas? And I also brought, because when I made spaghetti, it was weird because I didn't do the spaghetti the way they did it. And so I will tell you, for a little while, I felt like a short order cook. And this is why I believe in modifications. Like, okay, here is our pasta sauce. Lipp side of the family, you can add whatever you want to it. Hunter side of the family, you can add whatever you want to it. And eventually, they didn't care. But in the beginning, it was really important for them, on both sides, to have as many things that were familiar to them as possible. I'm also going to say, Ron, that when we first blended our family, we did not have family dinners around the table every single night. It was just too much. And I know all the advice is get everybody around the table and this will be...
No, not for step families, it's not. But for, for biological families, that is what you'll hear. And again, the expectation, that works for them, it'll work for us. And then if you try it in your home and it doesn't work, back off, find a different strategy.
Please give yourself grace. Please give yourself grace. Also, and this would be true in a traditional family, is that, not everybody's on the same schedule. We had somebody who was in theater. We had a couple of kids who were in track. We had one kid who was taking extra college classes. Dinner was between 4 and 7:30 every night. And you know what? Can I just say that was a gift some nights that we didn't have all those personalities at the table, but it gave Roger an opportunity to sit down with Jeremy and, unpack his day. It gave me an opportunity to sit down with Justin and Kimberly and unpack their day. And it was a gift that we were not all on the same schedule because just being in the same household is enough energy sometimes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. Listen to what's happening in your home. I heard you in one of the presentations you did for us, taste and modify. Nope, that's not exactly right. How do you say that?
Yeah, no, I think taste and adjust.
Taste and adjust. That's it. Taste and adjust. And that's a cooking strategy. Well, with your family, right? You've been trying to put everybody together for family meals, and sometimes it goes all right, and sometimes it's just really hard. Taste and adjust. Feel free to make it work a different way. Find a different strategy. You'll get there. Just keep moving forward. To that end, what if somebody's listening that they just don't even know where to start on this whole Sabbath thing, or they've just struggled to make it work? Do you have a couple of thoughts on just getting started?
Here's a couple of things. Is to, one, pick one meal that you're going to do at home. And by the way, if you say, you know what, the best strategy for us is to go out, if that works for your family, do that, because then everybody kind of gets their own thing. If that's the day that you go out, I know it's expensive even to take your whole family to fast food, but if you're going to invest in one day, maybe that's the day to do it. But cook one meal ahead. If you're going to be eating at home, cook one meal ahead or maybe you make a giant batch of spaghetti on Friday and you eat the leftovers on Sunday. I don't care. Just so you don't have to be planning and, producing on that day. And then start to see where the intersection is for your family. Are they all movie lovers? Maybe that's the day you watch a movie. For us, it was movies, but it was also board games. Every one of our kids love board games. You know who's not a big fan? But you know what? I'll do it. I'll do it. And to see our kids who kind of wished for each other's deaths. I'm not going to lie. Like, in the beginning, it was tough. Let's be absolutely honest. It was really tough in the beginning. I don't know it was their deaths, but they wanted them to go away. Let's be honest. To hear them all laughing as they're playing Settlers of Catan was such a gift. It's like those are the things that I hung on to the rest of the week.
Oh, absolutely.
It was so wonderful. So is there an intersection where even if I don't care for it, I can be there to appreciate everybody getting along and kind of doing their thing? And then lower your standards. And I mean this in the best way possible. We all grew up on TV shows or maybe sermons that we heard that said, a good family is going to sit around and share prayer requests and, just affirm each other. And I had to lower my standards greatly and to say, hey, if we can all be in the same room together and we can at least care about each other, that's a huge leap in the beginning. And it's be in it for the long game. The long game is what you're in. It doesn't matter if there's a squabble that Sunday when your kids are in their teens or there are little kids and there are big kids. You're going to have those things. But the long goal is for you to have a relationship with your kids that you continue to be able to speak into their lives about things of faith, things of family, things of who they are as human beings, as people, and to say, to be a representation of God's love in their lives. And that's the long game. And that's the game I want to be a part of. And again, it's not always going to be smooth. It's not always going to be perfect, but my stepkids love me and I love my stepkids. My kids love Roger and Roger loves my kids. And I didn't always know that was going to be the outcome. And these small little things that we put into place to put in building blocks of us becoming this ragtag family, I'm so grateful to God that we were given the permission to take our foot off the gas sometimes.
Okay. It's a cookbook with a strategy for being able to Sabbath as a family. I think we've talked quite a bit about the strategy part. Let's talk food. I'm curious, what are some of your favorite recipes that are in this book?
Okay, so there's a lot of healthy recipes, but let's talk about my favorites, okay? So, and my plan on this for a lot of it is like on Saturday night is kind of our main meal. It's the roast. It's the chicken. It's the, that big hunk of meat. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
But it's about cooking enough on a Saturday night that you can have some leftovers on purpose to repurpose to, you have the chicken on Saturday night and you have the chicken tacos on Monday. So there's a real plan for that. So lots of fun things like that. If you try no other recipe, please try the mac and cheese recipe. I have perfected this over many, many years.
I can't wait.
It is quite the crowd pleaser. Lot of those kind of recipes where you can make the modifications. So if you're having a big crowd over, or your blended families are usually bigger than some of our more traditional families. And so lots of different tastes. Maybe there are different, not just food preferences, but allergies. That we cook for a lot of people at our house because we do retreats. And so we've got a lot of things where you can modify stuff in there. Oh my goodness. The desserts in there are off the hook because what is Sabbath without a great dessert, right?
Yes. Thank you.
We've got the world's best chocolate chip cookies, an angel food cake that will make you forget that those store-bought cakes. they're great in a pinch, but once you taste this one, it may remind you of a kitchen sponge. But you put enough whipped cream on it, it'll be fine for anything. But the homemade one is amazing. And just a lot of ways of taking, that main thing you're eating on Saturday and repurposing it in a fun way in tacos, in pastas, that kind of thing. So they really are, the recipes are crowd pleasers and quick. Lots of quick recipes, because that's what we need when we're just trying to get through the week. And we plan for you to be eating out one night a week. We plan for you to be getting something from Trader Joe's or Aldi's one night a week. This is a meal plan that reflects real life, not cooking dinner 7 nights a week.
I will tell you, the taco stew is that's a favorite in our home. And when I saw that recipe, I was like, yes, thank you very much.
I'm so glad. It's so easy. I don't know if you've cooked it or Nan's cooked it, but it's such an easy recipe. And yes, it's such a crowd pleaser. And the soups, okay, the soups. Try, first of all, the chicken and wild rice is amazing.
Okay.
There is a tomato gin soup, which you can replace the gin if that's not something that you have in your home. We've got some modifications for that, but that is the best tomato soup recipe on the planet.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm hooked. Hey, let me tell you a quick story and then ask you one final question. When our youngest son, who's now 25, going on 26, when he was still in high school, he had a friend that he invited over to our house for dinner one night. And his friend came over, and later we discovered that he was completely blown away because A, we all sat at the table together. B, no TV, no smartphones, just food and conversation. He had never experienced that in his family, in his household, his entire life. That made an impression on him. He still comes and hangs around with us. Why is that simple act of sitting down and enjoying a meal together as a family, why is that important for families?
I don't cook from scratch every day. Let me just say that. But when I cook, whether it is, something that has been a family tradition, or maybe I'm getting a couple of things at the supermarket to put on the table, that is an act of love. That says feeding people is caring for people. And when food is on the table, there is nothing that can spark conversation like a shared meal. My favorite memories are sitting around a table talking way too late. The dishes are around us. Maybe somebody got really ambitious and got up and made some coffee so we could sit there and linger a little longer. In our society, we are not given many opportunities to linger. And when we linger, that's when you go from this part of the conversation to this part of this conversation to this part of the conversation. And we get beyond, we are just able to open up in ways that we can't when we're passing by somebody at work, when we're connecting with somebody at school. There is riches, there is depth in that lingering, and food provides the platform for that. And so if you can't eat together most nights, could you endeavor to do that one night a week where there's an opportunity to linger, where maybe you've even pre-planned some questions that you can ask the people who are sitting around the table? Because when I ask you about who you are, when I feed you, those are both signs of how much I value you. And I will tell you, in the first 5-10 years of being a blended family, it was very hard for me to say, I value you and I love you. It was something that my stepkids had a hard time hearing from me. But when I feed them and I want to know them better, they feel that love, they feel that value. And that's why I love what you did for your son's friend, and I know that we can do that for our own families as well.
Kathi, thank you so much for being with me today. Thanks for writing this book, Sabbath Soup.
Ron, some of the best conversations I have are with you, and they're not over food, but we will do that again sometime soon.
Taco soup. I'm holding you to it.
Taco soup. I love it. Yes, please.
Thanks again for being here. If you, the viewer or listener, want to know more about Kathi and her ministry, look in the show notes. We're going to get you connected. And hey, if this podcast or the Family Life Blended ministry in general is serving your family in any way, well, let me ask you to do one of two things. Would you just share a resource with a friend so maybe they can benefit the way you have? Or perhaps you could donate to Family Life Blended so we can continue to reach somebody else. It doesn't have to be much, but it helps keep the lights on. We appreciate it. Okay, next time, is there someone in your life who is a narcissist? A spouse, family member, maybe an ex-spouse? We're talking with Laurel Slade-Wagoner about that next time on Family Life Blended. I'm Ron Deal. Thanks for watching or listening, and thank you to our production team and donors who make this podcast possible. Family Life Blended is part of the Family Life Podcast Network, helping you pursue the relationships that matter most.